7 of 9. I don't know if anyone else ever noticed this, but she's kind of attractive. She joined Star Trek Voyager when I was 17, a post-pubescent, hormonally crazed creature of pure lust-driven id, more animal than human, so I definitely noticed. So did her crewmates aboard Voyager, and once Seven herself started to embrace the whole not being a Borg drone anymore thing, exploring relationships of the social, romantic, and physical kinds became something she was open to, even interested in. And yet, her time aboard Voyager seems to have been oddly sexless. It wasn't sexless for everybody. Voyager was a family show on a broadcast TV network, so executive producers Rick Berman and Brannon Braga couldn't give audiences the hardcore weekly fuckfest they so clearly wanted to. But that doesn't mean none of the characters on the show were ever getting down. Tom Paris and B'Elanna Torres got to tearing it up so regularly they decided, fuck it, let's get married. Harry Kim had himself a little fling with an alien girl. He caught an STD that made him sad whenever she wasn't around. I think they called it love. But hey, you take the ride, you gotta buy the ticket, right? Good on you, Harry. And I'm not sure if Captain Janeway ever actually had sex with that Irish holodeck hunk, but she was definitely thinking about it. Chakotay even got some action. Remember that time he had sex with Linda Gray? Or was that an episode of Models, Inc.? Anyway, my point is, the Starship Voyager was a Playboy mansion with a warp drive, and everybody was in on the fun, except, apparently, 7 of 9. But what if things were different? What if 7 did find love, or at least, love, with one or perhaps several of her crewmates? Who would they be? What would it be like? Exploring these questions will take me somewhat out of my comfort zone. As I said in a previous video, I am not naturally much of a shipper, but I was commissioned to make this video by Brian Weber, happy birthday Brian, who has his own suggestion for who would be a good shipmate for 7. I'm saving that one for last, however, because once I thought about it, I realized there are quite a few possible partners for 7 that have potential of the romantic and story variety. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge that the writers of Star Trek Picard, in which 7 is a character, have decided to ship her with Raffi. That's great, but for the purposes of this video, I'll be setting aside, what's their ship name? Sevafi? Raffiven? I'll be setting aside Raffiven to focus on possible ships between 7 and her fellow members of the Voyager crew. Now then, as I said at the start, 7 is, and what is the technical term used by anthropologists? Yes, a smoke show. I mean, if you're into the whole conventionally attractive thing, as quite a few members of the crew of the USS Voyager seem to be. For example, our favorite forever ensign, Harry Kim. He was quite taken with 7 when she first came aboard, and everybody noticed, including 7. In the episode Revulsion, early in 7's first season on the show, there's a subplot with 7 and Harry working on a project together. 7 catches on that Harry's got the hots for her and cuts right to the chase. She walks up to him in the mess hall and is like, "Do you want to fuck or what?" And Harry's like, "Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba." And 7 says, "Seriously, if that's what you're after, we can do it. I'm not into all this flirting and hinting around about what you want, but I'm open to exploring my humanity, so get naked." Get naked, get buck naked right now. And Harry's like, "I think we should just keep things professional between us." So 7 goes, "Okay, suit yourself," and that's the end of that. But what if it wasn't? Suppose when 7 told him to take off his clothes, Harry had said, "Sweet," and jumped out of them space pajamas. 7 peels off that aluminum foil she's always wrapped in for some reason, and they spend a few hours christening the mess hall. Neelix catches them leaving, dressed, but looking tousled and a bit rosy in the cheeks, as he heads to the kitchen to get breakfast started. After Harry and 7 are gone, Neelix looks around and thinks to himself, they must have been making a cake. There's glacé everywhere. Would 7 and Harry have a chance as a serious, steady couple? Conventional wisdom would have us believe that Harry is punching well above his weight, but I don't know about that. He's not a bad-looking dude, and youthful exuberance counts for something, but shipping isn't just about sex. Or at least, That's what shippers are always telling me, usually without me even bringing it up. It's weird. Shipping is about relationships. That's why they're called shippers and not sexers. And also, I bet most of these shippers couldn't tell a pullet from a cockerel if you gave them surgical loops and a flashlight, so it's really just as well. Seven and Harry have some things in common. They're about the same age. According to Memory Alpha, they're only a year apart. I always think Seven seems a lot older, but that's probably just because she has so many years of experience annihilating entire civilizations as a part of the Borg Collective, which confers a certain maturity. They've both endured terrible trauma. For Seven, it's being abducted from her parents as a young child and enslaved by a race of hive-minded cybernetic automatons who devour entire civilizations while spreading their empire irresistibly across the galaxy. For Harry, it's, pretty much everything. They're both huge nerds, but I'm not sure if that's actually a point of compatibility. Seven is the kind of nerd who is smart in an impressive and intimidating way, with a personality defined by a cool, confident detachment, which sets her apart from the group, but which also paradoxically draws others irresistibly toward her. Harry is the kind of nerd who plays the clarinet and assumes the sidekick role in holodeck adventures with his best friend. Which is fine. Nothing in the world wrong with being a sidekick. TV's Frank, we salute you. I'm just saying, he ain't Rocky Jones. He's Winky. Actually, I think Winky got laid more. Anyway, I think Harry might suffice as a fling for Seven while she's on the rebound from the Borg. But I don't know if they have enough shared interests and personal compatibility to be anything more than that. If we want to ship Seven with someone who could join with her to form a stable, lasting couple, we'll have to look elsewhere. But we might not have to look very far. Tuvok. Unlike with Harry, there's never any indication of sexual attraction between Seven and Tuvok, but also unlike Harry, there is eventually an established friendship. And no wonder. Seven and Tuvok are both logical, emotionally cold, disdainful of the pretense demanded by many social rituals, given that it's well established in the show how much they have in common and what a strong basis there is for a relationship. I think it's okay to jump straight to speculating about their sex life. Of course, Tuvok was married and monogamous, so if he's going to get it on with Seven, first I'll have to rack my brain to come up with a justification. Let me see. Oh, I know, Ponfar. Tuvok catches that Vulcan fuck fever in Season 7 of Voyager. In the actual episode where this happens, Body and Soul, Tom Paris helps Tuvok out by creating a holo program of T'Pel, Tuvok's wife, that he can just absolutely crush until it's out of his system. But what if, instead of a holographic real doll of his wife, Seven volunteers to be Tuvok's partner in the Ponfar Pokey? I know that Seven is on a mission away from the ship when Tuvok enters Ponfar during Body and Soul, but what's the harm in a little fanfic retcon when it's in the name of love or irresistible biological urges? It's a pretty simple rewrite. Tuvok is feeling under the weather, which Tom Paris, in his capacity as ship's medic and understudy to the Doctor, diagnoses as Ponfar. Paris is in sickbay, mixing Tuvok up a nice stiff and aphrodisiac. Poor choice of adjective, but you get it. When Seven walks in and figures out what Paris is up to, she goes to Tuvok's quarters, says, "Look, I know you're married and all, but if you need to just screw somebody's brains out for a few days, I'm totally up for it. Or down for it, or sideways, whatever you're into." And Tuvok's like, "Right this way." And after that, nobody'd better come a-knockin' because that cabin will be a-rockin'. If Seven and Tuvok were characters on Enterprise, the successor series to Voyager, that somehow managed to be even more bland and perfunctory, but also way, way hornier, this would totally have happened. Seven has another obvious potential shipmate among her shipmates, and that, of course, is the Doctor, also known as Holodoc, or ultimately, in one possible future, simply Joe, because it was the last episode, and the writers of Voyager said, "Hey, let's just be lazy, but pass it off as a joke." And then one of them said, "Oh, you mean like we've done the entire series?" And then the first one said, "Yeah, but pass it off as a joke." Anyway, the Doctor was one of Seven's closest friends on Voyager, and there was definitely some romantic interest from his direction. Remember Someone to Watch Over Me, the My Fair Lady episode they did, where the doctor volunteers to teach Seven the ways of love, and ultimately finds himself falling in love with her? Seven goes on some practice dates in the holodeck, then goes on a real first date with Lieutenant Chapman, who she permanently disables during a dance. Seven's a little bummed about that, but the doctor's like, I'll dance with you. And they do, and the doctor's thinking, I could get used to this. Eventually, the doctor decides to tell Seven how he feels about her, but before he can, Seven walks up to him and says, oh, hey, so there aren't any good boyfriends on this dumb ship, so I'm going to give up on dating. I don't need any more love lessons, okay? Bye. And then the doctor is sad and plays the piano, which is what sad people do when they want to make us sad, too. I bet I know what would cheer him up. If 7 of 9 became his girlfriend. But how'd that work? The most obvious way is to do what the Someone to Watch Over Me episode doesn't do and go full My Fair Lady with it. So, something I didn't mention about the episode is that the Doctor and Tom Paris have a little wager going over how well 7 will take to the whole dating thing. 7 finds out about the wager when Tom mentions it to the Doctor during a fancy reception, and she storms away, angry and hurt, and quite understandably so. This is all, broadly speaking, in line with My Fair Lady, but here's the change I would make to bring it in even closer. Instead of coming to see the Doctor to tell him she's found no compatible mates aboard the ship and is therefore swearing off dating, the Doctor goes to see 7 in her cargo bay, and 7 tells the Doctor that Lieutenant Chapman, who is healing up nicely, contacted her and asked her out on a second date. Now it's the Doctor's turn to get his feelings hurt, and he lashes out, leading to a fight where the Doctor is like, well, good, who needs you? I hope you and Lieutenant Chapman are very happy together, except we both know you won't be. He's not enough man for you, and when you figure that out, you'll come crawling back. Then the Doctor goes back to sickbay, and 7 comes crawling back, because that's how My Fair Lady ends. He insults and condescends to her, and she comes crawling back. I could have danced all night. Admittedly, if we go that direction, 7 and the Doctor could become a somewhat problematic couple. I mean, why would 7, or any self-respecting person, go back to someone who had treated her so poorly and not even apologized? So we'd have to smooth that out a little. 7 goes back to the Doctor after their fight because she does have feelings for him, and because he also has feelings for her, he apologizes. But I wouldn't want to smooth things out too much, because if Voyager is missing one thing, it's interpersonal conflict amongst the crew. And if Voyager is missing 2 things, it's interpersonal conflict and sexual tension amongst the crew. And the Doctor and 7 could supply both of those. They're both proud, stubborn people. Around the rest of the crew, they're always arguing, sniping, second-guessing, and insulting each other. But as soon as they get behind closed doors, it's like fucking damage. And the rest of the crew is hip to the fact that this is like 7 and the Doctor's thing. So whenever they're bickering, everyone else who happens to be around is exchanging knowing glances like, as soon as we leave, they're gonna fuck like they're trying to kill each other. There could even be a scene where 7 walks in late for a staff meeting, and Janeway's like, where have you been? And 7 goes, oh, I was just riding the Doctor like a goddamned Appaloosa. I actually crashed the motherfucker, had to recover him from a restore point, which is why it took so long. I didn't want to blue screen him and blue ball him. Know what I'm saying? Anyway, what did I miss? I think it goes without saying that the show would have been way better like this, but the Doctor's not the last potential ship for 7 aboard Voyager. In fact, there are 2 more I want to talk about before I get to Brian's suggestion of a ship for 7. The first of those 2 involves 7 and the captain of the ship, the brilliant but terrifyingly unstable Catherine Janeway. What? I said brilliant. It's a compliment. There's an obvious way to go with this one, which would be to follow the established pattern of their relationship and have Janeway be the wiser, more mature partner who is helping 7 discover her sexuality. But I see this one differently. I think it would be much more interesting to subvert that expectation and portray 7 as if not the experienced one, at least the more knowledgeable and confident one. We could say that it's the first time either of them have been with a woman, And Janeway could be like, I ain't never done this before. And Seven says, I ain't never done this before either, but do you have any idea how many lesbians I assimilated back in the day? A lot. Let me take the lead with this one. I got this. That could work for a couple of reasons. Janeway is the captain of the ship, but finds herself in the more submissive role in her personal relationship, so that reversal might be interesting to explore. Plus, my reading of the Seven-Janeway relationship as it's depicted in the actual show has Seven in the dominant position anyway, or at least deserving to be, because throughout the series, whenever Seven and Janeway have some kind of conflict over what they should do to solve a problem or respond to a crisis, Seven always turns out to be right. Janeway doesn't listen to her or learn anything from the fact that she's always wrong and Seven is always correct, but that's the deal nevertheless. But there's more to a relationship than what happens on the bridge and what happens in the bedroom. And that's where this particular ship might find itself heading toward the rocks. Because, like Seven, Janeway is a nerd, but like Harry, Janeway isn't the cool kind of nerd that Seven is. Janeway is the weird kind of nerd who acts out Jane Eyre pastiches on the holodeck. For fun. She does this on purpose because she enjoys it. I can see Seven putting up with maybe one chapter of the Janeway Lambda 1 holo novel before she turns to Janeway and says, okay, that's enough of that. Let's just be friends. I'll see you at the morning briefing. In fact, maybe in this version, Seven's disillusionment at the discovery that Janeway likes to spend her off-duty hours cosplaying as an off-brand Charlotte Bronte character could be so pronounced that it drives her into the arms of someone who seems to have no hobbies or personal habits, weird, boring, or otherwise, or, in fact, any personality whatsoever. I'm talking, of course, about the only canonical romance Seven has during the series with a fellow member of Voyager's crew, her last-minute fling with the ship's first officer, Commander Chakotay. Okay, so I was a little hard on Chakotay just now. It's an overstatement to say that he has no personality or habits or hobbies. He, like almost everyone else on the show, ain't the most sharply drawn character in the world, but we do learn a thing or two about him. He was a leader of the Maquis. He's a member of a tribe descended from Native Americans. He has a tattoo. Oh, he used to be a boxer, which we randomly learn in the 5th season after the writers decided to do a boxing episode, spun the wheel of characters, and it stopped on Chakotay's face. And he's apparently into anthropology, too. That's what his Memory Alpha article says, but I don't really remember that. Anyway, Chakotay. I got no problem with Chakotay, nor do most Voyager fans, from what I can tell. What many of them do have a problem with is the fact that Chakotay and Seven were randomly thrown together as a couple at the end of the series. And by end of the series, I mean literally the last episode of the series, with almost no build-up at all. Like, Endgame rolls around, and all of a sudden Seven and Chakotay are having a private picnic in the cargo bay, and I'm watching like, did they forget to air some episodes? When did this happen? In the original timeline, Seven and Chakotay stayed together for a long time, even got married. But during that timeline, Voyager remained in the Delta Quadrant for much longer than 7 years, and by the time the ship returned to Federation space, Seven was dead, killed on an away mission. That all changes after Admiral Janeway goes back and alters the timeline so that Voyager makes it home sooner. In the altered timeline, the one that's in place at the conclusion of Endgame, Voyager reaches Earth not too long after Chakotay and Seven have begun dating. And I think that changes everything. Chakotay might be an acceptable boyfriend if she's stuck on a starship on the far side of the galaxy, but once Seven gets back to the Federation, come on. First of all, she's going to be a celebrity. The liberated Borg drone who joined the lost Starfleet crew and helped them make it home, she'll be bigger than Amelia Earhart, who also wound up in the Delta Quadrant, it turns out. Isn't Star Trek weird? Given her personality, I don't think Seven would welcome this kind of attention, but she also won't be able to completely avoid it. She'll be traveling all over the Federation, attending conferences, making appearances, meeting people, interesting people who are interested in her. It's only a matter of time before Chakotay gets that "let's just be friends" subspace message. How can he compete with that? Plus, won't he be in prison? He was a leader of the Maquis, a group that took up arms in rebellion against the Federation and threatened a peace treaty with the Cardassians. Whether you're sympathetic to the cause of the Maquis or not, from the Federation's perspective, he's a criminal, right? He's got to take an extended vacation in New Zealand. And one day he'll be at the penal colony and he'll turn to a guard and say, "Hey, how much longer have I got to stay here?" And the guard will say, "Rest of your life, 75 years. That's a Chakotay joke. Well, now that I've addressed all the other 7 ships worth talking about, and also her and Chakotay, it's time to talk about the one which Brian, who commissioned this video, actually wanted me to talk about in the first place. And that ship is the pairing of 7 of 9 and Samantha Wildman. And I know what some of you are saying. Samantha Wildman, didn't they kill her off after her baby Naomi was born? Nope, they didn't. She survived the entire series. The writers just forgot about her, because why would little Naomi need a mom when she's got Neelix, the attention-starved sponger with no respect for personal boundaries, just ask Mr. Vulcan, and 7 of 9, the stern and emotionally remote, recently liberated Borg drone? But this video isn't about Naomi, it's about 7 of 9, and Naomi's mom. And 7 of 9 having sex with Naomi's mom when Naomi's not around. That's your job, Neelix. Keep that kid busy. Take her through one of those flotter stories on the holodeck while Mommy and Aunt 7 do their cardio. I'll admit, when I first received this commission, I wasn't too sure about the pairing of 7 and Samantha, or Sevantha, as I've just decided they shall be collectively known. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it started to make. For one, they're practically co-parenting Naomi on the show as it is. For another, putting 7 and Samantha together as a couple would allow Star Trek to dabble in a genre which it has heretofore all but ignored, lesbian rom-com. Though, technically, I guess it would be a bisexual rom-com, which is an even more overlooked genre, which makes it even better. Samantha is a warm and loving but overworked single mom. 7 is a serious scientist who doesn't think she has time in her life for love. And Naomi is the kid in the middle who sees what neither of them can, that they're perfect for each other. This Valentine's Day, Paramount Pictures is proud to present the story of a pair of star-lost lovers and the little girl who helps them find their way home. Jerry Ryan, Nancy Hauer, and Scarlett Palmer's in 7 of Mine. So we'll pick things up sometime either in late Season 6 or early Season 7 of Voyager. 7 has been tutoring Naomi on astrometrics and such. They've become pals. Meanwhile, Samantha is constantly busy with her duties in the xenobiology department. And when she's not at work, she's alone in her and Naomi's quarters, reading or doing work-related research, or sometimes telling Naomi bittersweet stories about her husband, Naomi's father, Greskrentrek, who is waiting for them back in the Alpha Quadrant. Sure, Samantha admits to Naomi, being away from Greskrentrek makes her sad, but someday soon, Voyager will get home, and then all 3 of them will be a family. Except, remember how at this point in the series, Voyager was receiving monthly long-range subspace transmissions from the Federation thanks to the Pathfinder project? Well, just in time for our rom-com's first plot point, Voyager receives its monthly transmission, which contains, among other things, a message for Samantha from her beloved Greskrentrek, who informs her that he's met and fallen in love with someone else, and as a result, he's filing for a divorce from Samantha in a Ferengi court, which offers one-sided divorces. For a reasonable fee, of course. In fact, by the time Samantha gets this message, the divorce will be final. Greskrentrex's homeworld of Kataris is signatory to a treaty with the Ferengi Alliance, which allows Katarians and non-Katarian spouses of Katarians to take advantage of such services, which is how Greskrentrek is able to obtain a divorce without his wife consenting. That last detail isn't important to the story, and almost certainly wouldn't actually be included, but I know if I don't explain it, some of you are going to be like, but how could he get divorced from Samantha without her even knowing about it? Or How can a non-Ferengi get a legally binding divorce from a Ferengi court? It doesn't matter. What's important is that the divorce happens and what it means for the characters. Not the imaginary legal minutia, but if for some reason you care about the imaginary legal minutia more than the actual story, there you go, you fucking nerds. Obviously, Samantha is devastated by this, but Naomi has never even met her father, so while she hates to see her mom so upset, she also sees this as an opportunity and begins plotting to get Samantha and Seven together. She's in a holodeck running a plotter program where the lesson being taught has to do with conflict resolution or something, and she learns that sometimes, in order to get people to do what's best for them, you first have to get them to want to do it. Naomi asks if you can use the same techniques for people who aren't having a conflict. Like, say there are two people who you want to be friends, but they don't really know each other yet. Flotter's like, yeah, I guess. And Naomi gets a twinkle in her eye. She's got an idea. She starts out simply planting seeds with Seven and Samantha, mentioning little things to suggest, indirectly of course, that they might like each other. For example, Naomi is working with Seven in astrometrics, and they detect a gas giant that's a creamy brown color, and Naomi says, ooh, that planet looks like an enormous Shaltubian chocolate, which Seven calls an apt comparison, visually speaking. That night, Samantha comes home after the end of her duty shift to find Naomi snacking on a plate of Shaltubian chocolates. Samantha's like, hey, Shaltubian chocolates, they're my favorite. And Naomi says, yeah, I know. Me and Seven were talking about them today in astrometrics, so I thought I'd use some replicator rations and make some. Hope you don't mind. And Samantha's like, not at all, and helps herself to one. And she says, just out of curiosity, did Seven say she likes Shaltubian chocolates? And Naomi's like, pretty much. And then it goes on like that for a while, like cutesy rom-com shit, you know. Eventually, Naomi manipulates Seven and Samantha into being somewhere romantic together. Like, she tells each of them to meet her in the holodeck at a certain time, but when they get there, she messages them to say that actually she forgot that she had a cooking lesson with Neelix tonight instead, but maybe they could just enjoy the program without her. And just to make sure they don't leave too early, Naomi does some technobabble stuff to the holodeck so they can't exit until they finish the program. And at first, Samantha and Seven are annoyed, but eventually they loosen up and have fun. And as they're leaving the holodeck, Samantha's like, would you want to do this again sometime? Without my daughter working us like marionettes, I mean? And Seven plays it cool, like, yeah, I mean, whatever. Then there comes that magical evening when Seven drops by Samantha in Naomi's quarters to show Naomi some fucking moon rock she's got or something. But Samantha answers the door and tells Seven that Naomi is out for the evening. She's... what's that game? That space checkers game that they play? Kadiskat. Naomi is playing Kadiskat with Icheb or something, and she won't be back for a while. There's nobody over there. I was acting. Anyway, Samantha's like, you can drop off the moon rock or whatever the hell it is with me, and I'll give it to Naomi when she gets home. Or, since you're here, you could come in and we can reenact Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I can't really draw. Can we do Bound? Yes, I love Bound. And not just for the sexy parts. It's like a really good movie. I think it's the Wachowskis' best movie, personally. I much prefer it to The Matrix. So much better than The Matrix. And they spend the rest of the night fucking and talking about movies they know about thanks to Tom Paris. And eventually they get married, and then Naomi has 2 mommies, and they all live happily ever after. Oh, also, Voyager never makes it home and they all die on the ship, but it doesn't matter because they have each other. The end.